Smackdown aired on November the 14th. There was nothing happened again. I guess the one thing that everybody's talking about is, Zack Ryder's big return. So I guess we'll talk about that. But was the show any good? No, not really, no. People claim that it was better than the previous shows. I can't tell. At this point, brother, I literally cannot tell. Again, we're going to try to get through this quickly. So Charlotte refuses to team with Rhea Ripley because they have history. I guess they have to create drama in order for this thing to feel like a story and not just people thrown together. Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley's drama, I don't remember it being that deep. They both wanted to be champions at one point. They've wrestled at WrestleMania a couple of times. They've had a pretty decent feud in the past. I don't know if it's, it's not like this is Lacey Evans. Lacey Evans did some really crazy stuff with Rick. And then if you were like, okay, well, Charlotte can't forgive that. That would make sense. I'm not sure if Rhea Ripley did anything to Charlotte that Charlotte has that crossed the line that is unforgivable. So this feels like very forced drama. Alexa Bliss, of course, is left holding the bag, trying to figure out how she can get Charlotte to join that team again. Rhea Ripley is wearing a face mask one more time because she breaks her nose every year. And Io Sky is just happy to be there. She's always smiling and she's always just happy to be present. As Alexa Bliss was trying to talk to them, they got jumped by the Niosaurus, Lash Legend, and the Kabuki Warriors. They're trying to create drama for this War Games match. And I can tell you right now, I don't care. All right? I don't care. We don't need to have a women's War Games match this year. It's just not necessary. We're good on this. The same thing that people said about Vince forcing Hell in a Cell matches applies to these forced women's Elimination Chamber matches, these forced women's War Games matches. We don't need these things. The only thing we need that absolutely needs to happen, and this is just if you're being fair, is the Women's Royal Rumble and the Women's Money in the Bank. Literally, that's it. And I'm pushing it with the Rumbles and the Money in the Bank because you really don't need those either. But when those events become 2 nights, that'll probably be the best option. But we don't need a Women's War Games match. This match is set up like a traditional Survivor Series match anyway, where it's a hodgepodge of guys, and people are more likely to accept it as a hodgepodge of people if it's a regular Survivor Series match, because that's what Survivor Series is. A hodgepodge of guys who don't usually teaming up to fight another hodgepodge of guys who don't usually team up. War Games is about factions. There's no faction in this situation. It's 2 tag teams feuding with 2 tag teams. I mean, whatever, dog. It's just whatever. Ilya Dragunov is in control of the open challenges, so he can accept or decline an open challenge as he wishes, according to Nick Aldis. That's why he says he's not giving a title match to Tommaso Ciampa, because Tommaso Ciampa, he has no respect for him, and Tommaso Ciampa has no honor. Okay. We weren't told this before. This is a new statement. This is something we didn't know from the beginning, so he can pick easy challengers if he wants to, and not just whoever shows up, which is what open challenge kind of means. Anyway, Ilya Dragunov had defeated Axiom. I'm not going to pretend that I paid too much attention to this. Axiom had no chance of winning. He's barely on the show as it is, whatever. After the match, Ciampa attacked Axiom and Nathan Frazier chased him off. They're not doing a good job of making Tommaso Ciampa seem great. They're really not. Tommaso Ciampa is actually very good. He was in excellent shape. He plays a great menacing character. That's sort of what he needs to be doing now. He also should be wrestling and winning matches, usually in short order, to prove that he should be wrestling Ilya Dragunov for the championship. And if he can't get an open challenge match that he can earn it through beating up a bunch of people, that would be the better way to do things. But they're making Tommaso Ciampa look like a goof. They're doing the whole, he's a jackass. Oh, come on. Also, that springboard DDT thing that Axiom did, I thought it broke Ilya Dragunov's neck. But, Dragunov he's unkillable. It's an interesting guy. He doesn't die. Paul Heyman arrives with Bronson Reed, and they have brought a contract. According to Paul Heyman, he can pick anybody from the SmackDown or Raw or WWE roster that he wants for his War Games team. So that's why he's on SmackDown. Nick Aldis doesn't want him there, call security. And when security arrives, for some reason, Cody Rhodes was with them. Cody Rhodes gets in the face of Bronson Reed, and they agree to have a championship match tonight. Oh, a title match. Bronson Reed versus Cody Rhodes. Oh my God, I'm so excited. How do you think this is going to end? Disqualification. Braun Breaker attacked Cody Rhodes. It's a disqualification. The bunch of guys came out of nowhere. Logan Paul, the Usos. Oh yeah, Jimmy Uso's on the team now. He volunteered. Because, it would have made more sense for it to be LA Knight. But no, we're going with Jimmy Uso. So, which is what I suggested last week, that it was probably going to be Jimmy Uso. So, LA Knight, who has been feuding with Seth Rollins, who they pretend... Remember, Seth Rollins faked an injury in a match with LA Knight. LA Knight has also been in the mix with CM Punk and Jey Uso in pursuit of the world title. No, not LA Knight, Jimmy Uso. Now, they may decide to stretch this thing, and instead of it being 4-on-4, it'll be 5-on-5. But as of right now, LA Knight's not going to make the team, even though he's in the story. And Jimmy Uso is not in the story, not really anyway, but he's going to be on the team. Very bizarre. Anyway, Paul Heyman has recruited his new guy, and it's Drew McIntyre. Yeah, the same Drew McIntyre that was suspended last week has been pulled from his suspension by Paul Heyman in this contract. So apparently, if you are chosen for a War Games match or something like that, that lifts your suspension automatically. I've never heard of this before. Usually, you would think guys who are injured or suspended or fired, they would not be eligible to be picked. But apparently, Paul Heyman can pick whoever he wants, and he picks Drew McIntyre. Now, Drew doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's very random, but he is feuding with Cody, and Cody's on the other side. So, okay, fair enough. He's not a member of the Vision, so he's basically a mercenary. And they do this from time to time. They'll put like a random mercenary on the heel side of the team. But this is not looking like it should be a War Games match. Now, the Vision is at very least a faction. At the very least, it's a faction. But it's only 2 people in the faction. Usually a pretty good faction, especially if you look back in the past, would have been 4 or 5 people. Now we're doing hodgepodge stuff. Again, would be fine for a traditional Survivor Series match. But for a War Games match, they're just throwing stuff together. People are blaming Cody Rhodes for SmackDown's terrible ratings. Well, the rating went back up, which is what I knew was going to happen. But it's not Cody's fault. Look at what they're doing. They put him in there with Aleister Black for 1 week with no build. Then they threw it out. They put him in there with Bronson Reed for 1 week with no build, and then they threw it out. Who's booking the show? The champion can only do so much. At some point, you gotta have decent creative around him. You have to have somebody with an idea. He has beaten Drew McIntyre, I think, twice now. And Drew is still in the story. Drew's still there. So it's like, what month is it? We're still doing this. We've beaten Drew several times now, and Drew is back. We even did something to purposefully get rid of Drew, and he's still back. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Look, I know that people don't like Cody, and that's fine. You could dislike Cody. But be honest. This is not Cody's fault. Look at the creative on the show. That's all you really got to do. Is look at what they're doing. Look who is he feuding with? Who is in position to wrestle him for the title in the future? Nobody. He's stuck in the Drew McIntyre vortex. Well, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's the Codyverse and Drew McIntyre is stuck in it. They're not doing anything fun. There's no fun. There's no energy to the product. Let's move on. So The Miz loses to Jey Uso and Zack Ryder returns. This is the Last Time Is Now tournaments. They also announced 2 more tournament matches for next week, neither of which I'm very excited about. The Miz and Jey Uso was actually surprisingly long. You would think they wouldn't want that match to be very long, considering it's The Miz and Jey Uso. But The Miz is good, and he was able to carry Jey to something respectable. Believe it or not, I think the match was probably a shade better than his match with CM Punk. And I know that Meltzer said that was a 4-star match. It was not. Okay. But I think this was a little bit better. I still think it was too long, though, because I don't think anybody believed that The Miz can win or The Miz would win. Zack Ryder is back. Matt Cardona, that sawed-off line bum, he's been out of WWE for like 4 or 5 years now. He claimed that Zack Ryder was dead. Long live Matt Cardona, king of the death match, and all this other horse shit. And he was not going to come back to WWE as Zack Ryder. Well, I guess he was running low on money, because Zack Ryder is not only back, but they're selling Zack Ryder merchandise. So now the question is he back as Zack Ryder permanently, or was this a one-off? I don't know if this is permanent. I don't know if it's a one-off. There's got to be something special about Chelsea Green, man. I mean, Chelsea Green is a very interesting case because, remember, she got fired from WWE. And she ended up getting her job back because she texted Triple H like, I want my job back. And he was like, okay. And now, apparently, she sent him a text that was like, now you got to hire my husband. And he was like, okay. Like, there was, what about this guy? Well, he looks different. You know, he's more jacked than he was before. But I'm not sure bringing Zack Ryder back got anybody spurs jingling and jangling, man. And then you beat him. So you brought him back, and he lost, which makes me believe that it's a one-off. I don't think he had a great match with LA Knight. It was okay. But to me, this is the Spider-Man meme. This is LA Knight, an older guy in great shape, who's probably going nowhere fast, versus an older guy in great shape, who's probably going nowhere fast. One is woo, woo, woo. The other is, yeah, they're not that much different. Except for LA Knight obviously has the potential to be a much bigger main event star than Zack Ryder does. But to me, this felt like Triple H telling both of these guys to look in the mirror. That essentially, you are what he is and he is what you are. And you could just as easily be on the outside with this guy, begging to get back in. But you don't have a Chelsea Green, LA Knight. Matt Cardona / Zack Ryder, he's been begging all year, for the last 2 years actually, that WWE should have called him back by now. And if Vince was running the company, they probably would have called him back a year or two ago. But it took as long as it did. Now the question of, is he back full-time or not? They're selling merchandise on WWE Shop, which leads us to believe that he is back full-time. But until somebody tells me that he's back full-time, I don't know if he's back full-time. Why would he come back full? Well, for the money, obviously. But for the money, what am I talking about? He's not going to get a bigger spot. He's just going to be a jabroni. I mean, I thought the point of him going on the indies was to reinvent himself. If he decided to put the clown suit back on, then, well, I guess when guys make fun of how much wrestlers pay, or get paid rather, there's people out there who would rather wear the monkey suit, like, Matt Cardona and R-Truth, than go on the indies. Well, clearly, these are also older guys, so maybe that's the big deal here. But it is what it is. I figured it would be Cardona. I didn't know he was going to come back as Zack Ryder. That I thought he was going to stick to his guns at the very least and refuse to be Zack Ryder. But no, he Triple H pulled events and said nobody knows who Matt Cardona is, but everybody knows who Zack Ryder is. And Matt Cardona was like, okay. And then obviously Chelsea Green got him the job, so he couldn't blow it. Imagine you getting your bum ass husband a job and he decided to shoot it down because he doesn't want to wrestle under a certain name. She'd probably divorce him. This reminds me of somebody, from the hood would do something like that. Go on a limb for a boyfriend who ends up quitting the job or getting fired because I don't like how he talked to me. I don't like how he looked at me. That's embarrassing. She put her name on the line here. So Matt's going to do what he needs to do, especially if he wants to keep buying action figures and playing video games and doing all these other things instead of impregnating her. Moving on to the rest of the Last Time Is Now tournament. Penta versus Finn Balor. Great. I'm looking forward to that. Carmelo Hayes versus Bronson Reed. Fantastic. Bronson Reed gets a cakewalk because there's no way he's going to lose to Carmelo Hayes. Come on, brother. Carmelo Hayes cut a hell of a promo, though. I'll say that. The promo was great. He said 50% of the people might overlook me, while 50% of people might know that I can get the job done. But 100% of me knows that if I get that shot, I won't miss. This guy's good. He can talk. He's just small. You know what would have been great if they had, they did a really good thing with John Cena in Boston. But you know who else is from Boston? Carmelo Hayes. Why wouldn't you do a Carmelo Hayes John Cena thing in Boston? They're both from the city. Why wouldn't you do that? I don't know. But Carmelo Hayes is going to wrestle, a bulldozer with arms and legs named Bronson Reed. It's going to be very difficult to get out of this tournament. They're probably going to do some shit like where The Miz cost them the tournament or something like that. But come on, bro. It sucks. Jade Cargill steamrolls B-Fab, which everybody knew was going to happen. And it was done the right way. One of those power bombs looked pretty brutal, though. Afterwards, Jade Cargill got into it with Mia Yim, who, of course, has been B-Fab's friend. And this means that Jade Cargill is going to be wrestling Mia Yim. And Mia Yim is going to be a contender for this world title. Look, bro. I guess, man. Mia Yim is dead in the water. She has no heat whatsoever. She's not over at all. There's no interest there. There's nothing there. There's no there with Mia Yim. She's a empty vase. It's over. Okay? Get her out of here. Replace her with somebody else. But as long as she's there, she might as well put over Jade Cargill. Whatever. Maybe she could teach Jade a thing or two. Maybe not. I don't know. Her name used to be Jade too. So from Jade to Jade, maybe they can between the two of them, they can not bore people to death. But Jade Cargill looks fantastic, and it's off to a good start. She killed B-Fab, which was good, and I'm glad that they didn't decide to try to force B-Fab to work a full match. She probably needs to work more tag teams and stuff like that until she gets her in-ring IQ up a little bit more. They're still talking about Bianca Belair's finger. She's been off for 7 months with an injured finger. She says she broke the joint of her finger, where I guarantee you 3 or 4 years ago, it would not have mattered how broken that finger was. She wouldn't have been out more than a month or two. She'd have been on with a cast if need be. Vince was not going to let her sit around for 6 or 7 months with an injured fucking finger. Not one finger. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories about how she's going to cut her whole hand off. She was pregnant. There's a bunch of shit popping on. It's like, no, Triple H just has nothing for her and probably is trying to keep her cold for a WrestleMania season. So he's just going to keep her off TV, and use the finger as an excuse. but the finger it's broken, it's obviously deformed, but it's not as swollen as it was. She's probably fine at this point. They're just bullshitting. So until we're stuck with Mia Yim and people of that ilk, until Bianca Belair's finger decides to, I don't know, regenerate. I don't know, man. Where did Julia and Kiana James go? Julia lost the championship last week in 90 seconds and then was not featured at all on SmackDown. How about that? And people wonder why she's not over. People wonder why, she's not getting really much of a crowd reaction. Look at what they're doing. Again, you cannot like her, but look at what they're doing. Look at what SmackDown is doing to people. Look at what they're doing to Aleister Black, for God's sake. He's back in the smoky room, whispering at folks. I didn't even hear his promo. And it's bizarre. I'm not turning my TV up louder so I can hear him have empty threats. But I know he's still feuding with Damian Priest, which, not my favorite. Not my favorite. Sami Zayn, he's been wearing the same clothes for 3 weeks. Jesus Christ. He looks like he shops at, the Red Cross. What on earth, man? Anyway, he's medically cleared, so he challenged the MFTs. The MFTs came out there. Solo called Sami Zayn pathetic, desperate, and selfish. Then Sami Zayn says, I'm not alone. So here comes Phoenix, Nakamura, and the Motor City Machine Guns. What a menagerie this is. Oh, Lord have mercy. And they started their fight with the MFTs. After this, Nick Aldis decides to make a traditional Survivor Series match of the MFTs, which are 5 people. Okay, cool. Versus Sami Zayn, the Motor City Machine Guns, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Rey Fenix. I'm like, okay, that's actually not bad. This is good. This is the kind of shit that Survivor Series needs. This is fun. Then he said it's going to be on 2 weeks on SmackDown. Huh? On SmackDown, you're going to have a traditional Survivor Series match on SmackDown when Survivor Series is the next day. Bruh. Just ponder that for a second. We're going to do the Survivor. We get to have Survivor Series matches everywhere except Survivor Series. You can have Survivor Series matches on NXT, and you can have Survivor Series matches on SmackDown. But you're not allowed to have a Survivor Series match on fucking Survivor Series. Does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to anybody? No. How about you cancel one of these fucking War Games matches, and then you put Survivor Series on that show? And this is when you could tell that the way that they're booking these shows is corporate bullshit. Okay? I'll give you an example. What I believe it was Tiny Hat Shapiro who talked about quote unquote low volume PLEs, meaning they're not booking a whole lot of talent for those shows. Right? That's why the shows are only 5 matches. And then a lot of those matches are singles matches. So they don't have to pay for tag teams. They don't have to pay for 8-man tags and stuff like that on the show. You keep the number of people featured on the show low. Okay? So this is obviously what they're doing for Survivor Series. Because remember, it used to be 5-on-5 in the War Games. Now it's 4-on-4. So they're already shaving people out of the War Games match. But now they're not doing this traditional Survivor Series concept at all either, even though it would make sense to put it on the show. They decided, nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to put it the day before. Why? I'm sure there's going to be some bullshit. Oh, War Games, man, there's going to be 2 rings. You don't need 2 rings for a traditional Survivor Series match. You don't need 2 rings. You don't need 2 rings. But I'm trying to make sense out of TKO doing ridiculous stuff that makes no sense. Whatever, dog. I don't care. I promise I don't care, bro. I just want Survivor Series to be Survivor Series, man. That's all I ask for, I don't know. But maybe they'll say it's like, you get a Christmas present 2 days before Christmas. It's still a Christmas present, right? It's still a birthday present if you get it 2 days early. It's a couple hours early. Get out of here. All right, SmackDown was the usual trite. It was not interesting, not exciting. You could tell. And here's the thing. I want to say this. I'm going to say this near the end. As a matter of fact, there's some stuff I need to talk about. I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to talk about some other things. So we may be here for another 5 or 10 minutes. The amount of people who are skipping SmackDown altogether now is a whole lot more than were skipping SmackDown a couple of years ago. Remember, they were saying that, 2019 was very bad and WWE sucked. There was not a whole lot of people skipping these shows 3 years ago. And these shows were 3 hours, right? These were 3-hour SmackDowns that people were like, oh, the show dragged. It was too long. That was the major complaint. People didn't want to watch the whole show because the shows were too long. Now they're skipping the shows, and the shows are 2 hours. They're skipping through the shows. They're skipping the shows completely because they know nothing's going to happen on the show. That's a completely different level of bad. And I see people say these stuff all the time about Vince and Triple H. And I say, yes, a lot of what Vince does is bad because he was throwing stuff at the wall. But occasionally there will be a car crash segment, whether it's an in-ring karaoke segment or something like that, that would be worth talking about. That somebody would look at and be like, I wonder what the hell is going on here. And we see those people post that stuff literally all the time out of context for WWE. It'd be some kind of crazy out of context segment, and people will wonder what the hell led into that and what the hell came out of that. You don't get that anymore. You don't get that sense of, if I don't watch this SmackDown, for starters, not only am I not going to like it, but there's nothing on the show that's going to matter. So you could fill it with matches, but people are not going to go back to watch mid matches like Jey Uso and The Miz, or even matches that are slightly above average, like, Axiom and Ilia Dragunov, because they don't care about those guys, and they know that Axiom is not going to win. But if you do car crash segments, at the very least, they float around online and make people laugh, and then they say, what the hell's going on here? What are you doing? And I see that so much. Like, that's part of the magic of getting people's attention. TKO is putting people to sleep. People are going to bed and then watching SmackDown and fast forward. And it's only 2 hours. Imagine when they go back to 3. So WrestleVotes allegedly said SmackDown is going back to 3 hours in January of 2026. And the internet exploded because a lot of people hate the idea of 3-hour SmackDowns. Obviously, USA Network doesn't hate 3-hour SmackDowns. SmackDown is the number one show on USA, and if you could produce more of that product, you will. And Nick Khan has gone on record, I think even when Vince was in the chair, that if he can make Raw 5 hours, he would, because he doesn't care. To him, it's all about the almighty dollar. He does not give a shit how long the shows are, or how long the shows have to be. He says if he can get more money, he's going to increase the hours of the product. Apparently, USA wants more money, is willing to pay more money. He's going to increase the hours of the product. That's simple. As a person who consumes the product, I can make the decision about how much of this shit I'm going to watch. A lot of people are not watching the shows now. They're fast forwarding through the shows. I would imagine the same thing is going to happen in January. And you're just going to have to fast forward through more shit. For me personally, I may watch the shows live. I may decide to pivot to not watching the shows live, because 3 hours is a whole lot of time to dedicate to a show that I don't enjoy. And I don't like SmackDown. SmackDown has been terrible for 2 years now, thereabouts. And it's kind of ridiculous. Donating 2 hours to it is a little too much, but 3 is asking for a lot, bro. That's asking for me to be doing reviews at like midnight. It's on a Friday, sure, but it's still on midnight. Now, Dave Meltzer put over the Braun Strowman eating television show He talked about how successful it was. It did like, I think 500,000 viewers or something like that. It's only been on for like a week or two. It ain't been on that long. And when SmackDown was announced to go back to 3 hours, he said that they're trying to sabotage Braun Strowman's new show by extending SmackDown from 2 hours to 3 hours, screwing around with Braun Strowman's time slot. What Meltzer doesn't realize is, one, you don't make those decisions after 2 or 3 weeks, right? This decision, if it's actually going to happen, they've been talking about it for a while. All right. They run a TV network. Okay. This is not a mom and pop shop. They run a TV network. They have to put out this kind of information for advertisers. All right. Advertisers have to know whether you're going to be running a live pro wrestling event or a food challenge TV show in this time slot. They can't just play the old switcheroo. It doesn't work that way. This is dumb. Okay. Second, they could always just move Braun Strowman's show to a different day. And they may do that. They may decide, hey, if he does so well on a Friday night, maybe we'll put him on Thursday. Maybe we'll put him on Wednesday. Maybe they'll move him up to 8 o'clock or something like that on a different time. But these things are not in competition. Braun Strowman was a wrestler, sure. But he's not in competition with a wrestling show because he's not wrestling. One thing that is always a banger in the United States and maybe globally, food shows. Man eats food, man versus food. The Iron Chef, Emile Lagasse, all people. What's her name? Rachel Ray. People love these shows about people eating because food is a universal language. People love food. So watching a big guy eat 100 hot dogs or whatever the fuck he's doing on that TV show would be interesting to people. And you can move that anywhere and people will be interested in watching it. It's helping local businesses because obviously it's advertising for those local industries. And he's going to get paid a lot of money and he's going to be able to, live pretty well off of the success for this show. And I can see this show being a success because food shows are successful. It's one of the most absolute slam dunk concepts in all of television and YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. Food is king. It's like the number one content that nobody skips is food videos. Almost nobody skips. This is why there's so many content creators eating mukbang in the front seat of their car. Because it's easy content. It's good advertising for the restaurants. And people do not skip food videos. So they're not going to skip a food television show. So Braun Strowman is fine. He's going to be fine. Dave Meltzer is trying to drum up more horse shit. If anything, because he's using the name Braun Strowman and not his real name, you might want to ask if WWE is even behind this. That it might be something they're working with USA on. Because when I saw the name Braun Strowman, I was like, why is he using his stage name? Well, obviously that's how everybody knows him. But why would WWE allow him to use his stage name? If they were going to sabotage the show, they would probably want him to change his name. And maybe they will. And maybe Meltzer will be right and be vindicated in the end. And, WWE gets involved and they force him to change his name and kick him out of his time slot and all these other nefarious things. But until then, they're probably going to move his food show to a different night. Or they're going to push it later in the day. Who knows? But I don't think that they're going to sabotage it because it was successful. It was probably a success that nobody saw coming. Because again, it's food show slop. It's not anything special, but whatever. Listen to Meltzer if you want. This show sucked as usual. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.